This is Beyond Borders, Teacher Voices. I'm your host, and today's story hits close to home for many of us who've crossed borders, geographically and professionally, to take up the role of educators here in the UK. This report comes from the London Evening Standard News, dated 7 days ago, and full credit goes to them for covering it. I'm not here to take sides, but I believe in making space to reflect, to question, and to listen. At a secondary school in Beckenham, South London, teachers are taking strike action. The reason? The National Education Union says Jamaican staff have been targeted through alleged underpayment, excessive workloads, and what they describe as bullying management practices. The school is part of the Harris Federation, one of the UK's largest academy chains. And according to the union, the strike is not just about the numbers on a payslip, it's about dignity, stress, pressure, and the right to work without fear. The NEU says some overseas teachers, particularly those from Jamaica, have been paid significantly less than their British colleagues, up to £10,000 less in some cases. And even though Harris committed to resolving the pay issue earlier this year, the union claims many teachers still haven't received what they're due. Teachers have described the working environment at Harris Beckenham as exhausting. Many say they're working nearly 100 hours over the recommended limit for the school year, taking on extra admin, doing cover lessons almost daily, and feeling constantly scrutinized. There are also claims that lesson observations are excessive, and some teachers have described a sense of being set up to fail. One said the targets kept shifting, so no matter what progress they made, the finish line was always moving. It chipped away at their confidence. One teacher, Jamaican, and 5 months pregnant at the time, shared that she was dismissed just months before her baby was due. She described the experience as cruel. She thought about pursuing legal action, but in her words, the process was traumatizing and she feared what the stress might do to her child. That's the kind of emotional toll that rarely makes it onto paper. But those of us in the profession, we understand. These aren't just jobs. These are lives, families, futures. Beyond individual stories, the NEU says union rights have been breached. They've claimed that the Harris Federation prevented their representatives from accessing the school, cancelled meetings, and denied training. In their eyes, this is part of a broader pattern where teachers, particularly overseas trained ones, are vulnerable and often hesitant to speak up because of visa dependencies or fear of losing their jobs. Now, Harris Federation has responded strongly. They have refuted all allegations of racism and unfair pay. They've said on record that Jamaican teachers are trained, supported, and paid the same as anyone else in comparable positions. They also say restructuring is necessary to manage government-imposed financial pressures like pay awards and national insurance increases. Their position is that the school remains open, the learning continues, and the strike is being used as a disruptive tactic. This is where we pause, not to pick a side, but to take a breath, to ask ourselves some deeper questions. What happens when migrant teachers, many of whom leave everything behind to build a better life, feel isolated or undervalued? What does professional support really look like in an environment that demands constant results? And how do we balance accountability with compassion, leadership with listening? For many of you watching, especially teachers from overseas, you've probably seen parts of your own journey reflected here. Maybe you've felt the pressure to prove yourself 10 times over. Maybe you've doubted your worth when leadership doesn't seem to see it. I'm not here to draw conclusions about what happened at Harris Beckenham. What I am here to say is that these conversations matter. They aren't just headlines. They're windows into systems, into cultures, and into the ways we protect or fail to protect the people who make education possible. So what can we do? We start by speaking, by sharing, by supporting one another in spaces like this, where teacher voices cross borders and borders don't silence our stories. Have you experienced challenges like this? Do you feel supported where you teach? Your voice matters. You're not invisible. Thank you again to the London Evening Standard for covering this issue. And thank you to every teacher here in the UK or overseas who chooses to show up, teach, and lead with integrity. If you found today's reflection helpful, or even just thought-provoking, consider sharing it. Let's keep this dialogue alive. Until next time.